Hi everyone, welcome back. Retirement is a major life transition that comes with lots of decisions to make and lots of new jargon to get your head around because no one teaches us this stuff. In this video today, we hear from Carlo, who I'm sure that lots of you can relate to because he had a high-powered corporate career in London for 30 years and now he's retired. Well, following his version of retirement, because I won't spoil what he's doing now, but he's certainly not putting his feet up, but he is doing something completely different with his time now. Carlo is one of my coaching clients, so you will hear him explain exactly what he got out of coaching, what he expected at the start, and whether the whole coaching experience met with his expectations. These interview style videos are longer than my usual videos, so feel free to put this on in the background whilst you're making the dinner or walking the dog. But do listen to the end because Carlo gives lots of really useful insights that you can also apply to your retirement planning if that's something that you are thinking about doing in the next 5 or 10 years or even further out. So without further delay, let's dive into this conversation. Good afternoon, Carlo. It's really good to see you again. Thank you so much for your time today. Let's dive straight in and tell everyone a bit about yourself.
Well, it's good to have your time today as well, Diane. So my name is Carlo. I spent about nearly 30 years working in the City of London in financial services, all sorts of jobs globally, lots of traveling. The money was pretty good, but it was very much in the rat race. And whilst I got a lot from it over the last 10 years of that sort of spell, my wife and I discovered Dorset, how beautiful it is down here. We also got a dog who was born and raised in Dorset. So we started spending a bit more time in Dorset. And over those latter 10 years of my career, I always wanted to try and move permanently to Dorset. So that was the game plan. We bought a sort of holiday home and we managed to get a foot in the Dorset sort of area. But my heart was in Dorset and my head was kind of in London, on the career ladder, etc., etc. Luckily, didn't feel lucky at the time, but I was made redundant about 4 years ago, which was the message that we took as being, okay, now's the chance. Let's get out. We don't have children. We're financially relatively comfortable. So despite managing to get a couple of more years of contracting work, I essentially moved to Dorset full time. And I took last year off. And as a result of thinking through everything, I've decided to retire from the financial industry. Despite my head constantly saying, go and look for another job again. My heart's won over. And a big part of being in a position to retire formally from the financial services sector has come from my relationship with you and engaging in your coaching services to really understand what my financial health is, what my objectives are, how we want to position ourselves, and as a result, can we achieve those goals with what we have? And the very clear answer I've arrived at is yes, off the back of the engagement I've had with you. So bit about my background, and that's where I am.
Thank you. That's a really inspiring story, actually, that I'm sure a lot of people get inspiration from because you had a plan, you knew where you wanted to be eventually. And I think that it's fair to say that a lot of people fear redundancy, and rightly so. And that as awful as it is to go through that, it sounds like ultimately it was a positive for you that you've now got through and turned around. And by the way, I think I see your Dorset dog sleeping on the sofa behind you. Yeah.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
right.
You started to touch upon this to why you came to me and why you wanted financial coaching. Maybe talk a bit about that and then explain to
Yep.
everyone what you were expecting, what you were anticipating at the start when you came to me.
So I came across you through the power of YouTube. Throughout my career, I know I've been contributing to a pension. I sort of did what I intuitively felt was okay in terms of contribution. I didn't do it in a deliberate or designed fashion. I just did something. Something was better than nothing.
Yeah.
And a lot of the way you described how people perceive pensions is exactly how I perceived it. It was a necessary evil. It wasn't a really exciting topic. I knew I had lots of time, so I sort of forgot it, did something, and then 30 years passed, and then I was made redundant. So in the research I was doing in the latter stages of my career, and certainly last year, my year off, was really getting into the nitty and gritty of how much does it cost us to live the way we're living now. So I did all that sort of data gathering, which I thoroughly enjoyed because I'm a slightly nerdy person. I think you have a bit of nerdiness in you as well down there.
Sure do.
That was really enlightening and illuminating on, okay, well, actually, I didn't have a clue how much life was costing us. We knew the main things, but it was really powerful to get it into a framework which I can update sort of every quarter going forward. And I've got the discipline to do that. Now, rather than that being dull or really sort of depressing, I just found it really exciting to finally take charge of it. So, but in the process of researching and trying to understand my pension and really trying to demystify and attack that topic, which for 30 years was sort of in the background, I discovered you and your channel. I saw others. What I got from you was, what attracted me to trying to get in touch with you was your sort of simple, easy to understand way of communicating what can be dry and or complex topics. You made them simple for me to understand. What resonated as well was how you describe people's perception of things, which was exactly my perception. You know, what does tax efficiency mean, and all these other terms. A lot of the assumptions people make are the exact same assumptions that I made. You're obviously very credible, knowledgeable in terms of your qualifications and know-how, so that was sort of a given. But I think what I liked most was the way you're constructively disruptive. I think you take pleasure, or you particularly like to challenge the status quo, and it comes across in your channel. Why are you thinking this way? Why don't you think that way? And it was like you were talking to me as I was watching you on YouTube, because that's exactly the sort of coaching I needed. So that all resonated, and I didn't really understand that you provided coaching directly to people like me. Yeah. I thought you were just sort of pushing content out, as useful as that was. So I clicked through to your channel and your webpage, and it said, 30-minute or 20-minute engagement. I thought, wow, click, I'm definitely going to meet you and see if we can work together. So that's how I came across you. What I was expecting from it was, the coaching terminology is a bit grey, but in hindsight, having worked with you, you have coached me. You've been like a shining star that has navigated me through a number of different directions that I had in my head, and you've given me, without giving me any answers, because you can't give the answers because it's kind of my choices, but the constructive challenge, the constructive disruptive, as I call it. There's things I don't understand, you help me understand them, and I've not been shy with you to explain all the things I don't understand, no matter how simple they may be. You're very respectful of how complex this topic can be, and put all that together, and we've sort of bounced off each other, and I've landed in a much clearer place. So I wanted to get to a clearer place through engaging with you, and it's exactly, I've probably ended up in a much clearer place than I thought I would. So that's what I wanted to get from our sessions, and what I did get.
That's absolutely amazing. Wow. That makes it all worthwhile. Thank you, Carlo, because that is exactly what I hope to achieve with every client. Now that we've touched upon it, maybe it's helpful for everyone to hear about exactly what the experience was and breaking it down into the nuts and bolts of it. And I mean the fact that it's the gathering the information, the having the sessions and the bits in between. So maybe just explain a little bit about what exactly it was that we did together in terms of the structure of it. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. So my financial situation comprised a sort of diverse portfolio, or I've got a stocks and shares ISA, or happen to have a stocks and shares ISA. I have a pension from my workplace. My wife had 2 or 3 pensions just left to fester from her previous careers. So there's a pension element to my sort of portfolio. There's an ISA element. There's cash and savings, and a few bits and pieces around shares and previous sort of long-term investments. So that was the whole package. Now, naively, I sort of hoped that and I probably expected too much, that after working with you, I get like absolute clarity on all of the above. But it became very clear to me the biggest grey area in that portfolio was the pension story, the pension stuff, both mine and my wife's. And so very quickly we prioritized that as being something that we sort of agreed would try and get me the help I needed. So we focused on one or two of the things. I wouldn't expect people to come in with 15 different financial disciplines and expect to get clarity on all of them in a short space of time. But so we focused on the pension, and I pulled together. I already had my sort of spreadsheet of how much it costs to live, and therefore how much we need to live either as we are, or in a slightly more modest way, or in a slightly less modest way, right? So I put a couple of scenarios together, and did that sort of work that was great input to our discussions that made us hit the ground running very quickly. Gathered the information, passed it to you before we even met, and then we got, after the first session, into, okay, it's obvious the pension is the area that we should work on over the 3 sessions, which we did, to see how I could achieve living along this sort of comfortable scenario I put together, how I could achieve that income. We talked about the pension would obviously play a role, so we just demystified what a pension is to me. We demystified all the optionality I had around leveraging it, because my goal was to try and maximize, after paying into something for 30 years, I really want that thing to work very hard for me, thanks very much. So that was the overriding objective. How can I get some value from this in the context of my scenario? And that's just speaking like that is exactly, when you open up your videos, you try and make people achieve their life goals with their financial goals, right? So that's exactly where we landed. So bit of analysis, lots of demystification, and your guidance on different scenarios. You know, 1 minute I was on the verge of getting an annuity with part of my pension. I was determined. I came into the session with you. I'm going to get an annuity. I want you to challenge me before I do it. And you did challenge me. And now I'm nowhere near going to get an annuity, because for the reason, for my personal circumstances right now, there are better ways of achieving what I needed to. I had an expectation as to what we needed. I understood the tools available from the pension perspective. And for this year ahead, I've actually moved the pension from where it was to somewhere else off the back of these discussions, where I can be much more flexible with it. I can pay into it, or I can draw down, and all that kind of stuff. My wife has consolidated her old sort of dusty pensions into one provider, and actually with direct guidance from you, you sort of challenged us to say, in light of your broader portfolio, why don't you take some risk on those pensions, because they're quite small in the scheme of things. Why don't you take some risk, put them in a high risk sort of environment, which we've done. So the portfolio is still diverse, but it's much tighter in terms of controlled and tighter aligned to what we need out of our life in the coming years. The thing I would say, though, is this probably isn't the last time I'm going to engage you, because things change so quickly, right? So I want to keep a relationship with you going forward, because it's not a one done, with hopefully many years ahead of us and many challenges and steps along the way. I think your guidance and coaching and how you keep up to date with all things in this space is going to be invaluable to us on a go forward basis.
Wonderful to hear. Picking back up on something you said there, is that you were absolutely amazing coachee because you came prepared. And I think it's important that everyone watching understands, as much as what coaching can bring, it's equally important that people understand what it's not. And I'm very clear, maybe not so much in the video so far, but I'm very clear in the diagnostic session that it's not traditional financial advice. I am a qualified IFA, but I don't tell people what to do. It is all about that challenging. And what you went through there, it's that, well, if you do this, you could have this kind of path, but have you thought of this? And it was all about, we went into a lot of exploring the risk and reward, didn't we? And we were looking at the performance of your pension over time and looking at the mix of asset
Yeah,
classes in there. And like you
that's
said,
right.
where you can take risk or where you could afford to take risk and where you might not want to, and
Yeah.
exploring those options. And like you said, because you did the work and because you were asking those questions, and it was great that you were not afraid to ask the questions
Mm,
because you shouldn't be. And
mm.
that's,
Yeah, absolutely not.
yeah, and then working together on that and working through it, it's ultimately empowering you then to take ownership and feel more in control. And I can't emphasize
Yeah,
enough, it's not for everyone. If you
yeah.
want to hand the control over to someone else, absolutely right thing to do. There is a
Mm,
space for people to do that.
mm.
But if you want a bit of coaching and it's that, it was that sounding board, wasn't it? I think it's
That's
that
right.
having somebody to say, well, I'm thinking about doing this. What does that
Yeah,
sound? And
yeah.
I would never, I'm always saying this, I'm not going to tell you what to do. But
No,
then, if pushed, "Well, what would you do in my situation?" Yeah, but I'm
yeah,
not telling you what to do. So
yeah,
that's why you were such a great coachee, because it was all that challenging yourself. And in between those sessions, you would go away and do a
mm,
load of work to maximize the benefit of then the next session.
yeah.
And also, what made it really good as well is that bouncing off ideas off each other by email in between as well. So
That's right.
maximize the use of the FaceTime as well. Thank you for that. I cannot fault you in the amount of work you did, because you did the work and then you have got yourself to where you are. And
Yeah.
then yeah, so you've touched upon this about where you are now and moving forwards. You haven't mentioned the little side gig you've got, because I think that's really interesting and it's so different than what you were doing in your career. And it's all about, chapters that we can have in our lives. So yeah, tell
Yeah.
everyone what you're doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, having sort of gone through this and got the clarity I have, I'm now lucky enough to be in a position where I don't need a career, but I need an occupation. I'm 50, just turned 56, and my brain is super active, so I've got to do something. And I've really done a huge pivot. All my life, I've been handy with DIY and fixing things. And when I moved away from Norfolk, where we were sort of half raised, I was born in Norfolk, half raised in Italy, to London, the big city. I didn't have anyone around to help, so I had to learn lots of things. I also am quite inquisitive, so even a boiler, if my boiler blows up and I'm about to pay someone to come and look at it, I'll have a look at it myself first because I can't make it any worse. And over the years, I've developed a huge amount of skills and sort of courage. And so I thought, well, in Dorset, there's a lot of it's a big demographic, there's lots of retired people, lots of big homes, small homes. Why don't I set up as a handyman or a property maintenance type person? And I also like technology. So the last towards the end of last year, which was my year off, I spent the winter building a website. Those of you in Dorset, it's called Mr. Fixit
And make sure I put
Dorset.co.uk.
that in the video description for anyone
Thank
watching
you.
from Dorset.
I
I'll put that in the description.
Thank you. And as I was doing this, I think this is so much fun, and I'm my own boss. And yes, the income isn't going to be spectacular, but it's more about the occupation. And in fact, the income is complementing the overall package quite nicely to boot. But I sort of sat there and thought about my unique selling point. There are lots of property maintenance people out there, and I'm sure they're all really good. But equally, I'm good. I'm honest. I'm professional, I'm educated, and I'm not going to mess anyone around. If I say I'm going to be there on Tuesday at 3, I will be there at Tuesday at 3, probably earlier. So I created this website. I started putting some leaflets out. I push stuff on Facebook, local to Dorset, some groups. And in the last 3 months, I've had about 47 clients sort of engage me. And out of those, about half of them have turned into business. And I've done things that I never thought I was capable of doing, but I am. And now I'm getting to the point where I'm getting some repeat business, and I know for certain what jobs I like to do and enjoy doing, and for whom as well. People, it's an important part. So yeah, I sort of took a bit of an entrepreneurial step, which is the direct opposite of spending 30 years in a corporate environment, frankly. and I'm really enjoying every moment.
Wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful, Carlo, because it would have been easy and nothing wrong with it to put your feet up and go and walk the dog. See, dog just disappeared.
Yeah,
Um, and that's nothing wrong with that. But the fact
yeah,
that you have another well, career, it's like you say, your own
yeah,
business, and I imagine that you felt part of the Dorset community anyway, but you
yeah.
must feel even more part of the community through doing this,
Oh,
would it?
completely. I've met very interesting people. I've in the last 2 or 3 months of doing this, I've probably got more stories and fun experiences to share than I did in 30 years in London. So I don't regret any of the London thing. It really did help me establish myself here and help facilitate a certain lifestyle while I was there. But yeah, I do feel sort of an integral part of the community, and yeah, I'm really enjoying it. And if it grows, great. If it doesn't, well, I've tried, and I that's helped my confidence to try something else if it doesn't. So
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going this year and see how it goes. It also has given me a great excuse to buy lots of tools, which as a DIY person, I stocked up on the tools, which is a side to sort of benefit.
Oh, I can imagine. But you know what? That is a great way to be starting a business, isn't it? In the fact that you have sorted your retirement out and you know that you will be more than fine. And this is then an added bonus. So
Yeah,
it's it would still be okay if you had the pressure to get the income from the business, but it's just so much nicer that
yeah,
sounds like first and foremost for you, it's all of the other benefits you get from
yeah.
time, the social interactions, the feeling
That's
useful,
right.
and giving your day's purpose.
Mm,
And then as an added cherry on the cake for that, you get some extra income to supplement your retirement income as well.
yeah.
Like there's no
No, it's
downside to that.
yeah. It's so far so good. But on reflection, looking back at those 30 years, hindsight is a wonderful thing. You and I have not spoken about the past much because I'm keen to think about, well, I could have done
Yeah.
that, but I didn't. So what are we going to do? That said, anyone out there who's in the midst of their career, if I'd known everything I do now about all the things we've talked about, pensions and so on, whilst I was in a corporate environment, I probably would have been more actively engaged in deciding my contributions and
Mm.
sort of planning what the future might look like, more sort of engaged than I was. Anyone listening who is in the throes of things, don't wait till you retire or whatever to engage you, Dianne. Do it ASAP because these are super important topics, and you've breathed life to them and made them interesting, Dianne, to a person who, despite having a PhD in quantum computing, I found the whole topic really difficult to get my head around.
Isn't that funny? Because that's something we spoke about before. I mean, it's a lifetime ago for me that way, way, way back. I have a PhD in biochemistry, and you've got this PhD in quantum computing. And for both of us along the way, myself included, with everything I've learned, all the qualifications I've got, pensions was a minefield for both of us. So
Yeah,
to everyone out there, just don't feel bad about not understanding it, because how
mm,
can we be much more educated? We're not showing off about our qualifications, but it's to make the point that don't
yeah,
feel bad if you don't understand this space, because
yeah,
we are ridiculously academically qualified and
yeah.
we can understand it.
That's
So
right.
there's absolutely no shame in that whatsoever. Um, Thank you. This has been an absolute joy to talk to you again.
Thank you.
And I'm delighted to hear that was hot off the press, actually. We haven't spoken about that we will be speaking on a regular basis. Well, at least once a year, hopefully going
Yeah.
forward. That's really good to know. And that means a lot. That's entirely your choice. And that's
No,
great.
absolutely. No, absolutely. We are not gonna. This isn't going to be the end. It's the beginning of a long-term relationship, I hope. And as I said, if you're ever in Dorset, let's have a coffee by the seaside, and we can go see some figures then.
That would be fantastic. Thank you so much, Carlo. And
You're welcome.
I'm sure everyone will have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. See you again soon.